Is Hogwarts Legacy the game that Harry Potter fans have been waiting for? That's the question I'm trying to answer with this video. The main story revolves around your main character who is starting at Hogwarts in their 5th year. They have this ability to see ancient forms of magic that no one else can see. There are these 4 wizards called the Keepers who are safeguarding this power from evil, and they put your character through trials to prove that they are worthy. All the while, you are trying to stop an evil goblin named Ranrock from seizing the power for himself and hurting wizard kind. You will be bouncing between doing main quest things that further the main storyline and also just doing normal student things like going to class and learning spells and the like. The main story didn't grab me at first. It started off really slow, but about midway through it did grip me and it had some really interesting moments. You do meet a bunch of other students who you become friends with, but I wouldn't say that there are any Ron and Hermione best friend types. However, there are some standout characters. The 2 that stood out to me the most were these 2 characters named Sebastian and Ominous. Sebastian is trying to help his sister who had been cursed by dark magic, and he will go to any lengths, including going into dark magic himself to try and reverse it. Ominous is best friends with Sebastian and his sister. He comes from a long line of dark wizards and is trying to stop his best friend from going down this dark path, even to save another one of his best friends. It is probably a highlight of the story for me. Aside from the main story, like I said, you also do go to class, which usually just involves like a small cut scene about the class itself, and then you usually play a small mini game to learn the spell. It's nothing too exciting, but as a fan, it was really fun to feel like you are a student at Hogwarts and going to class and such. The character creator the game has is alright. It doesn't let you go too crazy with some really weird looking characters, but there are a bunch of different face options. You can put scars and such. You can also change the pitch of your voice, have a masculine voice or feminine voice. So there are a lot of options here. You just can't go too crazy with it. When your character first arrives at Hogwarts, you go to the sorting ceremony where the sorting hat sorts you into a house. Now, this was the part that made me very disappointed because it's painfully obvious what house you're going to go into. You can also just, if you don't like the one you got, just select whatever you want. It would have been really cool if they added some kind of trivia questions type things to actually let you get sorted into the appropriate house. Although none of this really matters in the end because throughout the entire game, the house you are assigned to doesn't really matter much outside of a few dialogue choices here and there, and that's it. Your character does have a bit of the yes sir syndrome, where they are basically just doing what they're told for the most part. And even though this is an RPG, the mechanics are very light. Most of the time for dialogue, you only have 2 options, the nice guy option and the mean option, and both paths usually lead down the same road. There are no real choices and consequences in this game. You are basically always going to be the hero. You can't just turn around and be a dark wizard or anything like that, which is a real shame because it would have really been fun to play through the game as an evil character. Now, this being an open world game means that yes, you can fully explore Hogwarts Castle, and it is massive. There are a ton of secrets and Easter eggs to find and puzzles to solve. You also pick up a bunch of these travel guide pages, which give you like backstory and hidden lore on different locations and items that you find. Different small random encounters will happen as well, such as sometimes you'll be walking through the halls and Peeves will pop out and start pranking children. Or this one time I was walking towards the Great Hall and there were these 2 suits of armor over in the side, and I look over and one of them just starts beating the crap out of the other one, which was just absolutely hilarious. I don't want to give too much away on the castle because part of the fun really is just exploring it for yourself. But I do want to say that this is probably everything that I wanted from a Hogwarts free roaming experience. The one major complaint that I do have is that you have these loading screen doors, which means when you walk up to a door, a little loading circle will pop up and you have to wait a second before you can actually walk through the door. It's really immersion breaking and very annoying. Not the worst thing in the world, but it does kind of suck. Outside of the castle, you can also visit the village of Hogsmeade. This is where you will be doing most of your shopping. You can also go to places from the books and movies, such as the Three Broomsticks. It's really fun to explore as well, although not nearly as big as the castle is. Outside of those two major locations, you have the open world, which is actually pretty massive. There are also a ton of things to do, but first let's talk about how you're going to traverse it. The main method of transportation is, of course, your broomstick. Now, at first, I didn't like the controls on the broomstick. You basically turn left and right with the left stick and then move up and down with the right stick. It's not horrible, but it didn't really feel comfortable for me at first. But the more I used it, the more I got used to it, and it did become really, really fun to fly around. Later on, you do unlock the ability to fly on beasts like a hippogriff or a thestral. It is really cool, but I did find myself defaulting to the broom about 90% of the time. There are a ton of things you can do out in the open world as well. One of the main ones are the Merlin trials, which are just little puzzles that you can solve throughout the world. There are a ton of them, but there are only about 5 or 6 variations, and so it does get kind of samey after a while. You also have these poacher camps that you can raid and pick up treasure from, or these spots of ancient magic that you have to platform your way around to collect. However, I found it very easy to cheese these by just using your broomstick to fly straight to the treasure or to just fly to these points of power to finish them. Let's talk about combat for a second. You have a basic attack that just flings a basic spell at an enemy and does damage to them. You also have the more advanced spells that you learn throughout class, such as Accio for pulling enemies towards you, or Depulso for pushing them away, or Expelliarmus for disarming, all of which do more damage than your basic attack does. You can also combo spells off of each other, such as throwing enemies into each other, or picking an enemy up and then slamming them back down onto the ground. There's a bunch of cool combinations that you can do. For defending yourself, you have a block and counter button or a dodge button. If a yellow symbol pops up above your head, that means you can block it and counter it. And if a red symbol pops up on your head, that means you have to dodge it and you can't block it, or it'll just break through and deal damage to you. All of these things together can give combat a really nice flow to it. Kind of feels like a Harry Potter version of like the Batman Arkham games or Spider-Man. How casting spells works is basically you can assign a spell to a face button, then you hold down the attack button and press that face button to cast the spell. The problem is that you have a large number of spells and you will be using them for both combat and puzzles, which means you will find yourself having to swap out spells pretty often. You do unlock the ability to unlock more quick slots by holding the attack button and hitting a directional button, but you always have far more spells than you do quick slots, so it can get quite annoying trying to find that balance. And while you can't necessarily play as a dark wizard, you do have access to the dark arts. Throughout the game, you will be given an option to learn each of the 3 unforgivable curses. The game does let you not learn them if you want to, but considering it doesn't really change the game at all, I highly recommend you do it because they are the most powerful spells in the game. Casting one of the unforgivable curses also feels pretty powerful. It has a slightly unique animation where it zooms in a little bit and it has a unique sound notification. It does really feel more powerful than any other spell that you cast. I did find it kind of weird that you can be with one of your professors at Hogwarts fighting some dark wizards and just cast Avada Kedavra and he just doesn't say anything. None of your companions really react to you casting these unforgivable curses. They may have a throwaway line like, "I don't like it when you use dark magic," and that's about it. It really doesn't affect much of anything. Your character also has access to ancient magic, which you can use as a special attack. It'll have different little animations where you're slamming enemies into the ground, or you can pull a spider towards you and stomp it. It basically is just an attack that does a massive amount of damage. The game does have some stealth mechanics as well, where you can cast a small invisibility charm and sneak around and attack enemies from behind. It's not very good. I found that I was able to move behind enemies pretty easily, even just walk past their face and in behind them to activate it. However, the animation for attacking enemies from behind is absolutely hilarious. Everything you do in the game contributes to your character's overall level, whether that be exploring or completing quests or combat, and you gain talent points, which you can then spend in different trees. Like dark arts, you can upgrade your spells to have them do different abilities, or give yourself more quick slots, which is absolutely essential, by the way. You can also equip a bunch of different gear that affects your character's stats, such as hats and scarves, robes, and such. There are a ton of different options throughout the game, so you can customize your character how you like. And luckily, the game does have a transmog system, which means you can equip the strongest gear, but have it look however you would like. Let's talk about the graphics for a second. While this isn't the most gorgeous game I ever seen, some of the characters can have like a doll-like appearance, and there is a lot of pop-up every now and then. But I mean, just look at this view. This game definitely has its gorgeous moments throughout. You also have access to the Room of Requirement, which, to be honest, I didn't really spend a lot of time in. There are a lot of things you can do here, though. You can decorate it to look however you like. You also have a revealing table that basically, throughout the game, you will find unidentified pieces of gear, and then you use the revealing table to like discover its stats. You can also set up potting tables and brewing stands so you can grow different plants and brew different potions that you can use in combat. There is also the vivarium that's inside of the Room of Requirement. What this is basically a room where you bring different magical beasts that you capture throughout the land, bring them here, and you can basically take care of them by like brushing them and feeding them and such. And as you do that, you will gain access to different materials from them, like feathers or fur. You can then use those materials to upgrade your gear. However, because you are constantly swapping between different types of gear, I never really found it useful to actually upgrade one piece. You'll always find something better down the road, which in turn means taking care of your beast just becomes pretty useless as well. Now let's talk about the bugs for a second. There weren't a lot of them, but I did run into a handful. There were numerous lighting glitches where the lighting would just be off and it would look really weird in certain sections. There was also times where enemies would get stuck in the wall or just do something weird. There was also this moment where I was going to do a side quest and the character that I was going to talk to's skin was completely invisible. And then when I went to talk to them, they were just completely invisible. Thankfully though, there was nothing game breaking here. All in all, I want to say that I had an absolute blast playing this game. And to answer the question that I posed at the beginning of the video, I would say yes, this is the Harry Potter game fans have been waiting for. While the RPG mechanics weren't nearly as deep as I would have liked, there's still a ton of things to do. And to be honest, I think most fans just wanted to explore Hogwarts and walk outside, hop on a broomstick, and then just fly around it. Honestly, that probably would have been enough for me, but thankfully, there is a lot more to do here than just that. There are a ton of side quests, a ton of things to keep you busy, a pretty interesting story, and some cool characters to go along with it. Thank you everyone for taking the time to watch this video. Please make sure to leave it a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe to see more. This has been the Gaspless, and I hope you have a wonderful day.